Good evening and welcome to the City of Woodstock's public planning meeting. Tonight's meeting is an open public meeting as required by the Planning Act. This meeting will be live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, and a recording of the meeting will also be posted on the city's website following the meeting. An agenda of the meeting can be found on the Agendas, Meetings, and Minutes page of the city's website. This meeting is for information and discussion purposes only, and no decisions will be made this evening. Council will make a decision on these matters at the regular council meeting to be held this Thursday. If you wish to address council at that meeting, you must submit a delegation form to the city clerk no later than 2 p.m. on Tuesday. A delegation form is available on the city website. If an application is denied, only the applicant or the minister may file an appeal with the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of issuance of the notice of council's decision. Only specified persons, public bodies, registered owners of land to which the plan may apply, the requester to amend the plan, and the minister may appeal the decision of the City of Woodstock to the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of issuance of the notice of council's decision. Excluding the minister, any party wishing to make an appeal must make written or oral submission to council at a public meeting. Please note that third parties, anyone who is not specified person or public body, do not have the right to appeal a decision for an official plan amendment to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Please keep your comments to planning matters only and avoid repeating comments that have already been expressed. If you have not provided oral or written comments but wish to receive formal notice of council's decision on the matter, please contact the clerk's department. The notice will provide further information on appealing the decision. The planner will be asked to present the planning report for each application. The applicant will then be provided an opportunity to make comments, followed by those wishing to speak in favor of the application, and then followed by those wishing to speak in opposition to the application. Prior to proceeding with the first application, does anyone wish to declare a pecuniary interest on any items that are on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, so we will begin. I will now call up the planner. The first planning report is OP 24-07-08 and ZN 8-24-07, application for official plan amendment and zone change, County of Oxford. Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
Good evening, council, staff, members of the public. As mentioned, applications for official plan amendment and zone change, OP 24078 and ZN 8-2407, made by Oxford County. The subject lands are described as Part Lot 1, west side of Light Street, Plan 10 in the city of Woodstock. The subject lands are located on the north side of Dundas Street between Van Sittert Ave and Light Street and are municipally known as 385 and 387 Dundas Street. The subject lands are designated Central Business District in the county's official plan, are currently zoned Central Commercial in the city's zoning bylaw, and are proposed to be rezoned to Special Central Commercial to accommodate the requests in the application. The applications have been received by the County of Oxford and the City of Woodstock for amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw to add a special provision to the Central Business District area to facilitate the construction of an 8-story apartment dwelling house with 36 dwelling units. The applicant proposes to rezone the subject lands from Central Commercial C5 to Special Central Commercial C5 Special. The applicant is proposing parking on the first and second stories with no commercial component on the ground floor and 32 parking spaces where a minimum of 18 parking spaces are required in the general provisions of the zoning bylaw. The subject lands are currently designated Central Business District according to the land use plan for the city of Woodstock. The Central Business District in Woodstock is intended to be the most intensive, functionally diverse, and dominant business and cultural administrative center in the county, and with a full range of commercial, entertainment, recreational, institutional, and open space and accessory residential uses are permitted. Within the Central Business District, medium and high-density residential development is generally permitted without the requirement to provide a commercial component. However, freestanding residential development is not permitted on lands having frontage on Dundas Street between Van Sittert and Beale Street. Further, the official plan's central area strategy includes policies to increase the residential population living within and in the vicinity of the central area. These policies specifically encourage medium and high density residential development throughout the Central Business District without a ground floor commercial component except for the land's designated pedestrian predominant area, which I described previously, which are between Van Sittert, which is also Broadway, and Beale Street, which is also Bay Street. The pedestrian predominant area is intended to be the most vibrant commercial and pedestrian oriented area of the Central Business District. An apartment dwelling house is a permitted use in the C5 zone. The applicant proposes to rezone the subject lands from C5 to C5 special to include provisions to remove the requirement for commercial on the first story of the building and to permit a maximum of 8 stories where 6 are permitted in the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw requires properties along this portion of Dundas Street to have commercial spaces on the first floor of any structure, and this provision is intended to ensure that the central business district is characterized by local commercial uses with a consistent facade of storefronts. The purpose of the parking provisions of the bylaw are to ensure that adequate off-street parking is provided for customers and residents of the downtown area, while recognizing that patrons of the downtown do not have to rely on vehicles to travel throughout the downtown and that additional parking may be provided at public facilities. The zoning bylaw permits an apartment in the C5 zone to be 8 stories except along a specific section of Dundas where the maximum height is 6 stories, which is in this area. The exception was established to create a consistent and compatible streetscape in the downtown core. The subject lands are approximately 941.8 square meters, and the applicant's proposals develop 36 residential units on the site. As such, the proposal constitutes a net residential development of approximately 382 units per hectare, which exceeds the high density resident range of 150 units per hectare. That being said, the city may consider slight variations to these provisions without a need for an official plan amendment. The official plan recognizes the importance of increasing the supply of affordable housing within Woodstock and directs that the city may consider the use of reduced municipal infrastructure requirements and lot standards on a site-specific basis to facilitate the delivery of affordable housing, provided that the use of such measures continues to meet all the overall objectives of the plan. With respect to parking, the applicant is providing parking in excess of the minimum required amount of spaces. The minimum required amount of spaces is 0.5 spaces per unit, which is 18 spaces. The municipal parking lot located on Light Street can also be used as visitor parking, and permits can be purchased for additional vehicles that tenants may own. With respect to the elimination of the requirement of first floor commercial space, the applicant has provided a concept plan, which I've shown up here, showing the first floor with large windows that mimic surrounding commercial uses and provides a compatible facade to the downtown aesthetics. Further, there would not appear to be a shortage of available commercial space in the downtown core at this time, and it's the opinion of staff that exempting this site from the requirement to provide a commercial space on the ground floor in this location in exchange for affordable rental units can be considered acceptable in this instance, and as it supports the city and county of Oxford goals of increasing the number of affordable residential units in the city. With respect to the requested increase from 6 to 8 stories, the applicant has provided a concept plan, which is again shown on there, that on plate 3, which is up on the screen, that shows the building will be stepped back from adjacent properties to provide a meaningful transition to a taller height. For council's information, the immediately adjacent properties appear to be approximately 2 stories to the west and 3 stories to the east. Detailed matters such as lot grading, access, stormwater management, and servicing will be addressed through the site plan approval process to the satisfaction of the city and county. Planning staff are of the opinion that the proposal is consistent with the policy of the provincial policy statement, supports the strategic initiatives of the official plan, respecting development in the central area, and as such, staff are satisfied that the applications can be given favorable consideration. So staff recommend that the city supports the application to amend the official plan to county council, and that council approve in principle the zoning bylaw until this has been heard by county council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Are there any questions from members of council? Mayor Accioni?
Thank you, through the chair, to Mr. Miller. First off, with the image that was on the screen, especially for those watching at home, want to make sure the building still looks like it's going over top of neighboring properties. And that hasn't changed. It's not, is it?
Through the chair, I also want to say that Rebecca's here to answer
Yeah.
good detailed questions, but no, I believe that's actually the building that's behind on the next block, and it's just showing that building behind.
That's the,
Yes.
right, yeah, that photo's fine. It's just the way that was at home.
Yes.
I didn't want people thinking that we're now going over top of delights and everything else. Okay, well, I will continue. I do have another question, if I may. Thank you. Is there fear? Well, I guess I have fear of this being a little precedent setting for the, no commercial on the first floor. So I just if council decides that they're in favor of this and approves this, want to be clear and make sure that council, all future councils will have a case by case applications, like we're not opening any kind of worms here that we can't close, that we're going to have the opportunity to look at every single property if we get other applications like this. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
through the chair, that's correct.
Yeah.
We're not changing the official plan policies or anything like that. We're considering this on a site-by-site basis. If commercial becomes a more in demand commodity in this area, it would certainly have the opportunity to say, no, this is not appropriate here. But staff in the recommendation felt that this was a good chance to put some more affordable units in the downtown where people can actually walk to most of the things they need.
And one last one, if I can continue on. Thank you. Is there any plans, and maybe this is for Rebecca, of any kind of front door access then with the windows and everything else with that appearance?
I think that's a good Rebecca question.
Yeah. Yes, there is, I assume. Is that the nodding? Yeah, okay. We'll wait till you get into it. Fair enough. Thank you.
Are there any more questions for planner? Seeing none, thank you very much. I'll now call on the applicant to come forward, and if you could state your name and address, please.
Rebecca Smith from the County of Oxford, so 21 Reeve Street here in Woodstock. Okay, so good evening, council. I maybe will give a little bit of an overview first and maybe to answer some of your questions there. So we are proposing a 36-unit residential building, hoping that at least a third of the units would be affordable. And again, maybe just to remind this group, when we speak about affordable, we're kind of talking about targeting individuals who are maybe making about $50,000 to $60,000 a year. For a one bedroom, you're probably looking at about $1,100 per month at this point in time. The design of the building, there's a lot of history with this property, I will say, and it is a very small footprint. So it's very difficult to fit a very large building on this site, which kind of lends itself to having the 8 stories with the 2 stories of parking really above ground. We did consider underground parking, but unfortunately, it is almost double the cost of what the upper floor parking is, which is very prohibited when you're trying to get affordable units. So we did look at that. There also are some structural things to note as well. And it's only because the buildings obviously aren't the newest buildings. So you do have to underpin the foundations on either side because the foundations don't go very deep to the west and to the east of the building. So underground parking, unfortunately, is a very cost prohibitive way to construct this building. So we looked at some alternatives, and really the alternative is to provide those two stories of parking above ground. We are proposing to put in 32 spaces, whereas only 18 spaces are really required. And I will say that just because it's downtown, we do still expect almost every individual in this building to own a car. We're not talking about very deeply affordable units here, so we do expect maybe the seniors or single mothers or single individuals in this property to still own a car. So we did want to try and get up to the full 36 units for parking. So that is a little bit, kind of those were the main factors in terms of us going with the 8 stories, having the 2 stories of parking and not having that commercial component. And then if we're really kind of thinking about this from the affordability perspective, we are asking somebody to be a long-term landlord for about 25 years. And that means that they have to be a landlord of the residential units. But if we include a commercial component, and if that commercial component is really a very small unit, it's very hard to rent. So we'd actually be putting a little bit more pressure on that future landlord to kind of rent that smaller space. I know in the end, you might find a commercial tenant, but it would be quite difficult with the amount of space that we'd be able to provide. So in turn, we've suggested or proposed something that at least has the lobby at the front of the building with the access right onto Dundas. There are design guidelines that the city has approved, so this building would clearly have to follow those things. And we've tried to at least show you a facade of what this building could look like. It might be a little bit different at the end of the day. Whoever ends up actually taking this building to build, they maybe make some changes for what they prefer to do. But I will say with this, with the county really incentivizing the affordable building and this building being under an agreement with the county for 25 years, we do have the ability to have a little bit more control in terms of how that building looks. So if there are specific things in the design guidelines, it's very easy for the county to ask for those things to make sure that it does kind of blend with the facades of those existing buildings. So that's maybe a little bit of an explanation in terms of the commercial component. There have been previous designs of this building that I think council has seen, that they did try to include a commercial component. At the end of the day, it was very difficult to make that work, and the commercial space was very small. So it's not that it hasn't been looked at before, it's just when you look at the feasibility of these buildings and kind of asking for those affordable units, there's sometimes a little bit of give and take, especially with the footprint that we have. In terms of the building itself too, this building, we're proposing to bring a mix of rents to the downtown, kind of pushing some more people into the downtown, infusing them with more of a population, and really offering that mix of rents that maybe isn't currently available in the downtown. So that's maybe the other angle that we're taking as well with this building. So I think that might address a bit. I tried to address a bit of the precedent setting questions. I'm just trying to think if I had anything else to include. And again, with the 8 stories, we are really trying to do that kind of back off of, like, the first and the second story will obviously follow the full footprint of the ground floor of the property, but then we are tiering it back. So it really doesn't have any of those shadowing impacts. And it kind of blends in a little bit from the street perspective. So of course I'm here for any questions, but I hope that answered maybe some of the things that you had. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any
Mhm.
questions from council? Councilor Schadenberg?
Yeah, through the chair to Rebecca Smith. I guess best question would be is the process therefore is nothing will be built whatsoever until obviously we approve this, but a request for a proposal process then has to happen to see if you can find a builder slash developer slash landlord for the project.
Yeah, so through the chair to the question, in county typical process, we like to get the property at least shovel ready. There's been a lot of work that we've done on this property. This is kind of the end goal of getting the planning approvals in place so that at least everyone around this table and everybody at the county level and anyone are really we're submitting a proposal understands exactly what is expected of them for the site. So I guess long story short, if we do get council's kind of go ahead at tonight's meeting, and of course county council thereafter, we will be looking to RFP this building through that competitive process. We do have quite a few people that are interested in these type of things, so it would follow that competitive process for sure.
And just to confirm then that the Capitol Theater building and the former Stubby's Furniture are now all encapsulated into one ownership for the county of Oxford?
Through the chair, yes.
Any further questions from council? Councilor Wismer Van Meer?
This might not be for you, Ms. Smith. I'm not sure. It might be for Mr. Miller. I'm not 100%, but just questioning that back alley and the access to the apartment. If you're increasing the parking spaces, assuming that there might be more folks that are driving vehicles, is there a concern at all for capacity of what that alley can allow? Vehicles coming and going, just thinking that there's obviously going to be higher traffic back there, and those alleys aren't all that wide, and some of them are unfortunately not always the friendliest to get through, but is there any plans in this to address what could potentially happen for traffic in that possibility? Sorry, this might not be for you. It came as you were talking about how many vehicles there could possibly be.
Through the chair to the councillor, we specifically discussed that with Filippo D'Amelio, who's an engineer with the city. He didn't have any concerns generally with the limited number of units and parking spaces. It's not a concern that he had for that type of alley. If there was many more units, it might be an issue, but he didn't identify that as an issue.
Councilor Lauder, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to Ms. Smith. On the building itself, and the planner has said that there's a setback of the actual apartments, I would think, I guess. So would that be quite a depth so that it's not all straight up from Dundas Street? There's quite a, it'll look nicer that way
Mhm.
if it's back.
To the chair. So the step back is actually on the east and the west sides of the building, so on the side. And I will say there are some other building code things with that as well in terms of fire. You do have to have that space. So that is a lot of the reasons why it's set back and also for shadowing as well. But I guess too, with this width of the property being so, like, it isn't a very wide property, with it being set back on the east and west side, even though the middle part goes straight up, at least it's a bit mitigated with it not being a full blank slate all the way up the 8 stories. So at the front, it is a bit straight up, but it's brought in on each side. So it's not the full width of the building to go straight up, if that answers your question.
Any further questions from members of council? I have a question. So you just piqued my ears a little bit when you said that the landlord for 25 years, so the RFP, I would assume, does not include the landlord, that the RFP would just be for the bid to do the construction, is that right?
So the RFP is actually for the owner, builder, landlord. So it would be the full package. Yeah, we would basically, when we RFP it, we're saying, we're going to give you the ownership of the property and potentially some capital. You're going to provide us this many affordable units. This is how the building's going to look. And they kind of work it on their side of how that will actually be constructed, how they will property manage, and it's really submitted in a full package. So it would basically be the full owner of the property, and it's really under kind of an agreement with the county for a minimum of 25 years. So we're constantly watching it to make sure it remains affordable, if that helps.
Yep, that's perfect. And just also thinking about the alleyway back there, probably back to Mr. Miller. I think the last time I asked if there was ever thought to connect the access of this proposed building to the Light Street municipal lot. Obviously, you mentioned engineering wasn't concerned with the width of that alley, but I mean, it's right there. And then there's actually one way out of the municipal lot and one way in. So I was just curious if anything further came of that, or if it's too late to inquire about that piece.
Through the chair, it's a good engineering question. We did talk about it quite a bit a while ago now, so I'm trying to remember. But essentially, I think Filippo had concerns that with the public access to those things, we'd have a hard time controlling how people are going to use it anyway. So whether we try to say you enter this way or not, the people are going to use it however they want to use it because it's a public space.
Perfect. Thank you very much. One more time, any questions from members of council? Seeing none, thank you very much, Rebecca. I will now call on anyone in favor of the application to step forward. Seeing none, and I will now call on anyone that would be against the application, opposed the application to step forward. Also seeing none, so we'll move on to the second application. So ZN 8-24-11, application for zone change, Sapson Holdings Woodstock. Mr. Miller, the floor is yours.
So application for zone change is ZN 8-24-11. I believe that council was circulated this morning or maybe even early this afternoon. This morning, the applicants had requested that this application be deferred. They'd like to try to reconfigure the parking to come up with a better way to satisfy some of the building department's questions. Because we didn't have a chance to send out a notice that this was being deferred. I wanted to get up here and at least say something in case you wanted to hear it. If you're open to deferring it, I won't talk about it anymore and we can do that. They're hoping to get back to us for the September meeting. I have not seen these new plans yet. So basically, if I don't get them by the middle of this week, it probably can't make it to September meeting either, but that's their goal.
So it looks like everyone's agreeing to defer at this time. Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. We'll see you again soon. So that concludes tonight's meeting. A decision on these items will be made at the council meeting on Thursday. I'll now look for a mover to adjourn. Councillor Martin, seconded by Mayor Accioni. All those in favor? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.